Haunted Ohio by Chris Woodyard, Vol.1, Chapter 12. The Old School Spirit, The Ghosts of Higher Education. And in the school of darkness learn what mean the things unseen. College students and ghost stories have always gone together. Student pranks, fraternity hazing stunts, and urban legends account for the most ghostly doings on campus. But not all. The Vanishing Student. Perhaps the most notorious Ohio school spirit is that of Ronald Taman, a student who disappeared from his room in Fisher Hall in the Miami University campus. On April 19, 1953, Taman's roommate returned from a weekend visit home to find the lights on their second-story room. The radio was playing. An open textbook lay on the desk, along with a wallet and some other items he recognized as Taman's. It seemed as though Taman had merely stepped out to stretch his legs, but after an hour, Taman's roommate began to get a little uneasy. Taman might have gone to his fraternity, but his coat was still in its place, and it was a very cold, snowy night. His roommate slept fitfully, thinking that every creak of the room in the wind, every footfall in the hall, signals Taman's return. He called in the police the next morning. Taman was a 20-year-old sophomore and a Dean's List student. He wrestled with the varsity squad and played bass with a local dance band, the Campus Owls. His car was found in its usual place, locked. The bass was in the back seat. His fraternity brothers searched the area, joined by 400 ROTC cadets. They searched the Talawanda woods, drained a cistern behind Fisher Hall, even looked as far as Action Lake at Houston Woods. 5 miles away, the Butler County Sheriff Department was called in, and then the State Highway Patrol, and finally the FBI. Airports, bus, and railroad stations were checked. Taman's photograph was placed in the papers. Finally, a lead came. A woman near Hamilton reported the night of Taman's disappearance. A knock had come on her door. A dark-haired, polite youth asked her where he could get a bus. He seemed a little confused, she said to the police. Theorized that Taman had suffered from amnesia. That was the last time anyone had ever claimed to see the youth. The following fall, students in Fisher Hall were startled by a voice singing, first in a bass voice and then a falsetto, in the formal gardens and from the woods. For the next 2 nights the voice tantalized the students, apparently approaching Fisher from the direction of the gardens, then fading back into the woods. The second night, the 2 students claimed to see a long-haired figure striding into the dark. The third night, a group of counselors heard the voice and gave chase across the golf course. On the 5th night, a tall figure in a long black coat was chased and lost in a wooded ravine. The rest of the week was filled with rumor and counter-rumor as students blundered about the campus in the dark trying to capture the phantom. In 1957, Fisher Hall was condemned as unsafe for residential use. The upstairs was sealed off and Fisher's lower floor was remodeled into facilities for the drama department, including a small theater. The theater students saw mysterious shadows, heard muffled sounds from the supposedly uninhabited rooms overhead. In 1967, a medium was brought in with the hopes of solving the mystery once and for all. But no spirits came, no manifestations occurred. The next day, the noises from upstairs would begin again. Some said the ghost was the acquisitive Judge Elma Fisher, whom roamed the hall collecting oddments with like a theater winch, and the portrait bust of himself. One can't help but wondering, did he collect Tammin as well? Shades of Purple. The Ghosts of Cayman College. The Ghost of Kenyon College. That makes sense. The Gates of Hell. According to some students, the gates of hell are located on the campus at Kenyon College. Survivors of Hell Week at other colleges might dispute this, but Kenyon does seem to have an unusually active collection of ghosts of school spirits. Kenyon's Gates of Hell are 2 columns that flank the middle path to the center of the campus. Supposedly, the Church of the Holy Spirit sits atop the pits of hell, although some think that the trap door leading to eternal damnation actually lies in the basement of Mather Hall. High School Spirits. A ghostly insomniac who committed suicide still paces the halls of Norton. A frustrated student who died before she could attend classes regularly rearranges the furniture in Manning Hall. A freshman who hanged himself in the attic of Lewis turns the lights on and off, knocks on doors, turns radios on and off abruptly, and flushes all the toilets at once. Somniferous pranks, of course. Physical fitness. At Wertheimer Hall in 1975, a solitary student was putting away the football projector in the field house. Suddenly he heard music which he assumed came from the record player in the cage. When he investigated, the music stopped. Frightened, he ran into a locked door to the coach's office. The door swung open by itself. When he stepped through, he tripped over someone, fell flat, and was almost overwhelmed by the feeling of a presence. Security guards at Wertheimer often hear a ghostly runner on the track. The idea of a ghost keeping in shape is an odd one. Physical fitness? Let there be light. At least one security guard believes that Hill Theater is haunted. Supposedly, Hill stands on the side of a drunk driving accident, where the driver and his passenger were killed. A light is always left on the stage. But on his rounds, the guard repeatedly found the light bulb unscrewed. He would screw it back in and go about his business, only to find it unscrewed a few hours later. He would find the curtains open on his first round and then closed when he came back again. The haunted swimming pool. The most famous spirit at Kenyon is the ghost of Schaffer Hall. Now Schaffer Dance Studio is formerly housed an indoor swimming pool, which is the focal point of the haunting. Supposedly, a diver on a high bounce hit the glass ceiling, broke his neck, and drowned. No accident of his kind has been recorded, but this hasn't deterred the ghost, or whatever it is. One evening, while 2 swimmers were at the pool, one heard a voice calling him from the locker room, which proved to be empty. Another evening, as one swimmer was on the phone, a voice behind him said, "Hi!" loud enough so that the person on the other end could hear it. The caller instantly whirled around, but there was no one there. In 1979, a lifeguard turned out the lights, locked the doors, and headed home. He looked back over his shoulder, and the lights were blazing, and there were splashing sounds coming from inside the pool. He raced back to the pool. The lights remained on, but the splashing stopped, and, of course, the building was empty. In 1984, After Shaft Pool became the dance studio, a young woman was practicing alone one night when she heard a noise like a diving board rebounding. Startled, she went to the dressing room to check it out. On the floor leading to the empty locker room was a line of wet footprints. This aquatic ghost is said to bring good luck to the Kenyan swim team and still manifests itself today. Wet footprints walk up to walls and then abruptly walk through them. Showers turn on and off by themselves. The sounds of splashing still resound late in the night, and sometimes a wet face, hair slicked back with water, peers from a small window in Shaffer Hall. Kenyon's tragic ghosts. Many of the ghosts of Kenyon have their origins in the numerous campus tragedies, like the Old Kenyon Fire, the DKE, pledge death, and a student who fell to his death in the elevator shaft at Capples Hall. The ghost of Capples is believed to be the spirit of a young man who accidentally fell down the elevator shaft. One version says that after spending the night in his girlfriend's room, the student pushed the elevator button, the doors opened, and he stepped, or some say was pushed, into eternity. Either he was too tired or too drunk to notice, but the elevator had jammed at another floor. The official version of the story was less romantic and more mysterious. In 1979, police believe a student deliberately stopped the elevator car and climbed into the shaft, only to fall to his death. Apparently no one else was involved. Possibly he was fulfilling part of a fraternity ritual. Riding the tops of the elevator was and still is a challenge to thrill-seeking students. Whatever the true story, a ghost arose out of the tragedy. The student's girlfriend began having horrible nightmares, including the sensation of icy cold hands on her face in the middle of the night. Terrified, she moved out. She was standing at the elevator when she realized that she'd left something behind. The friend who was helping her move went back to the room, but found the door was completely blocked by the chest of drawers. The ghost, who seems to bear some resentment towards female students, the dead student has been seen leaning transparently against a woman student's bookcase. He flits through doors, and once he tried to suffocate a student with her own pillow. The Delta Kappa Epsilon instigation tragedy in 1905 created one of Kenyon's most durable ghosts. Stuart Pearson, a freshman pledge, was struck by a train and killed as he was waiting on the railroad bridge over Kongkosing River. Every year on October 28th, Pearson returns to his old haunts, staring out of a bullseye window in DKE division as the fatal train passes. The ghost is apparently confined to the 4th floor of Old Kenyon. Windows open and shut or are slammed in dead, calm weather. 4th floor residents hear footsteps above them, where there is no floor. The tragic Old Kenyon fire in 1949 killed 9 male students. The dorm burned to the ground, but was later rebuilt. Students have reported seeing legless torsos gliding down the 1st floor halls. Lights flicker on and off, and toilets flush on the 4th floor by themselves. One resident who unknowingly occupied a room where one victim had been trapped heard cries of, "Get me out!" and pounding noises. Another student saw a locked closet door tremble violently as if someone were inside. When the door was unlocked, there was nothing but a layer of dust on the floor. These ghosts demand to know what modern students are doing in their rooms, shake people awake at night, shouting, "Ed, wake up! Fire!" and leave candles smoldering by 1949 yearbooks opened to the page with the names of the 9 students killed in the blaze. 9 fiery deaths created 9 ghosts who go on hoping that they were alive. Sorority spirit at Bowling Green. Bowling Green State University, like many colleges, has a sorority ghost, Amanda of Chi Omega. 2 tales account for her existence. In one, a little girl who strayed from a park behind the student union, where the Chi Omega house now stands, was killed by a train. Not knowing she's dead, she continues to play in the park that no longer exists. The second story alleges that Amanda rushed Chi Omega a long time ago. She was killed by a train the very night she was to receive a bid. So desperate was Amanda to be a Chi-O, she returned to the sorority as a spirit. Amanda is very much a part of Chi-O life. One room is dubbed Amanda's room, where weird things like falling mirrors, locked doors, and turned-off stereos regularly occur. Items also mysteriously vanish, only to reappear in the house utility closet called Amanda's Closet, which sometimes locks itself. In every house composite photo, a blank spot is left labeled Amanda. Amanda was inadvertently left out of the 1986-87 composite. That photo routinely falls off the wall. A few years ago, psychic investigators saw a woman with brown hair wearing a skirt. She was most evident in the kitchen, they said. In the kitchen, the clock refuses to stay on the wall, and noises like plastic cups falling are often heard, although no mess is ever found. Is it by such pranks that Amanda, the darling of Chi-O, manifests herself? Just don't mention her name during rush week. The student who saw through time. On the campus of Dayton's University of Dayton, Ted Peters and his friends were ready to party one Sunday night in April 1991. In fact, Ted had already gotten a start on the evening's festivities by drinking a fifth of Southern Comfort. He was able to walk, barely, but he felt ready to take on the world, seen or unseen. Ted was used to premonitions and the seeing of entities, and he had warned friends, Greg and Kelly, that somehow it was going to be an odd night. Crossing a courtyard by the chapel of the Immaculate Conception, Ted kept looking back over his shoulder. Then he began to walk backwards. Finally, he stopped. It seemed logical at the time, he explained. When I looked back over my shoulder, they were approaching and disappearing. When I stopped moving, they stayed. Greg and Kelly walked back to me. Kelly said, "What is it, Ted?" Barely able to talk, Ted described a courtyard filled with children playing around the black-clad figure of a priest. He caught the year, 1856, and the priest's name, Father M. I was having a hard time vocalizing. I was stuttering. I see children's, and I see a priest, Father M. Michael, Marcus, I don't know. 2 dates stand out in my mind. 1928, 1856, or 1854. He then covered his eyes. I see flames, and then they're gone. Is that all? Questioned Kelly. Yes. With that, Ted staggered on towards an off-campus bar. Later at home, he passed out, and he didn't give his vision another thought, but Kelly did. Ted says, when I went back to college the following Tuesday, I heard from Kelly. "You're not going to believe what I just found," she said. Kelly had read a paper her neighbor had written on the history of the University of Dayton. In 1850, St. Mary's School for Boys was founded by Father Leo Meyer, one of the first Maronist missionaries to the United States. Brother Maximum Zeller was the first teacher. In 1854, Stewart Mansion, the original school building of St. Mary's, burned to the ground. In 1856, St. Mary's Convent was built on the site where today St. Joseph's Hall stands, which also burned in 1987. The significance of 1928 was not found. The vision was all in black and white, Ted said a month later, puzzled. And I said children, but they were not young children, more like 4th to 8th graders. I hadn't ever been to UD before that. I had never seen any of the buildings. I didn't even think anyone was paying any attention to what I was saying. Ted believes that the alcohol somehow lowered his inhibitions, so he could see back through time, but he has not yet repeated the experiment. Ghost at Sinclair. The buildings of Sinclair Community College in Dayton are sleek and modern. The last place you would expect to see a ghost. But says Patrick R., a former employee to the college, Sinclair is full of 'em. The old Dayton hanging field was right under the cafeteria. They hung thieves and cattle rustlers there. Apparently some of 'em are still hanging around. In Blair Hall, you'll feel young people tugging on you. They'll come right up to you and yank on your coat, or they'll smother you, press down on your chest. I hear people laughing when I knew darn well nobody's in there. When I first started working at Sinclair, I thought the noises were a lot of outside noises sucked in through the air vents. But then I realized, nah, this place is haunted. Elevators would move by themselves and open up. You'd hear people talking. You'd hear cats. Cats meowing in the walls, just as plain as you and I talking. Sometimes I could hear 2 people dancing back and forth on the stage. It was bizarre. In Building 7 on the 3rd floor, I know there was nobody there, but I'd check out and there'd be doors slamming and people talking. At first I thought it was the public relations guy in his office, but there was nobody in the building. Sometimes Patrick would get just a passing glimpse of the spirits. More often he would hear talking, laughing, music, little babies crying, especially at Blair Hall. It was full of 'em. You'd hear the big, heavy fire doors in the cafeteria shut, and no one was ever there. Actually, he says, it was kind of neat. You'd think, here comes an elevator, it would pop open, and you'd expect to see somebody, and it was empty. Patrick laughs. It was a real learning experience working at that college.